Nobody cares about your tears. Nobody cares about your excuses. The world is moving forward while you sit there crying like a victim. You're not unlucky. You're undisciplined. Stop feeling sorry for yourself because self-pity is the disease that's killing your life. Why? Self-pity is the drug of weak men. It's the addiction that destroys you silently. The problem with self-pity is that it feels good in the moment. You sit there telling yourself life has been unfair, that the world is too cruel, that nobody understands you. Done. You cry in silence, scroll on your phone, maybe even tell people how unlucky you are, and it feels like relief. But here's the truth. It's poison. Every second you spend in that cycle, you are convincing yourself that being weak is acceptable. You are giving yourself permission to lose. When I was younger, I had every reason to feel sorry for myself. I wasn't rich. I didn't have the luxury of falling back on family money. I didn't have connections to open doors for me. I had nights where the fridge was empty, where the bills were stacked, where every single day felt like a fight to just exist. I could have sat there and cried about it, told myself I was a victim of circumstance. And let me tell you, the temptation was real. It's always easier to sit down and feel sorry for yourself than it is to get up and fight. But that mindset never solves a damn thing. The bills don't get paid because you cried. The world doesn't respect you because you complained. Once you complained. Life doesn't get easier because you felt sad. I remember staring at myself in the mirror one night broke, exhausted, thinking I had nothing left. And I had two choices. Tell myself this is unfair and give up, or admit that the world doesn't care and I have to find a way to win regardless. Self-pity wanted me to surrender. It whispered, you deserve sympathy. You deserve comfort. You deserve to quit. But there's no reward in that. Nobody is handing out trophies for who cries the most. Nobody is applauding your sadness. The truth is, the world moves on with or without you. And the only thing self-pity does is paralyze you while everybody else keeps climbing. Self-pity is like a warm blanket. It makes you comfortable in your failure. It tells you, it's okay. Don't push yourself. Stay here. But the problem is, comfort is the enemy of progress. I learned very early that if I gave into that feeling even once, I would drown in it. And the men you see who are miserable at 40, 50 years old, sitting in bars, telling stories about what life could have been, they're just the end result of a lifetime of self-pity. Every time they lost, they told themselves it wasn't their fault. Every time they failed, they blamed the world. Every time things got hard, they folded. And by the end, they became nothing. I had setbacks that crushed me, fights I lost that I thought I should have won, deals that collapsed after I worked for months, times where I thought I was climbing, only to fall back down to zero. But instead of sitting there drowning in self-pity, I asked myself, what's next? How do I adapt? How do I win? That mindset is what saved me. That's why I kept moving forward while other men around me collapsed. Because I refused to let weakness become my identity. Let me tell you the truth. Most people will never say, nobody cares about your problems. Not really. Your family might love you. Your friends might listen to you. But deep down, everybody has their own problems to fight. Nobody is lying awake at night thinking about how hard your life is. They're too busy thinking about their own. And once you understand that, you realize feeling sorry for yourself is not just useless. It's pathetic. It doesn't change reality. It just keeps you stuck in it. You don't deserve sympathy. You deserve results. You don't deserve pity. You deserve victory. You deserve victory. And the only way you're going to get it is by cutting that weakness out of your system. Every single time that little voice in your head tells you to feel sorry for yourself, to slow down, to rest in misery, you have to silence it with action. Do the push-ups, make the calls, put in the hours. Because every action you take against self-pity is a step toward becoming someone who cannot be broken. I have lived the pain. I have slept in cars. I have fought in cages. I have fought in cages. I have stared at zero and still kept moving. And if I had given into self-pity at any moment in that journey, I wouldn't be standing here right now. The only reason I won is because I understood one thing. Nobody is coming to save me, and crying about it won't change it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. It's killing your life. Nobody cares about your excuses. That's the cold truth men don't want to hear. You can dress them up, make them sound logical, even convince yourself they're valid. But at the end of the day, the world does not care why you didn't win. All it sees is the result. And that's the harshness of life. Results are everything. Excuses are nothing. When I was broke, when I was hustling just to survive, I had every excuse available to me. I didn't come from money. I didn't have an army of people supporting me. I wasn't given some silver spoon start in life. I was in a small apartment, barely paying rent, training in gyms where half the equipment was broken. I could have said, I don't have the same opportunities as others. I don't have the right connections. I don't have the right connections. I don't have the right environment. And maybe people would have nodded their heads. Maybe they would have agreed with me. But agreement doesn't change reality. Even if everyone sympathized with me, I would have still been broke, still been stuck, still been a loser. I learned early that the world rewards winners, not whiners. When you walk into a room successful, with status, with power, with money, people listen to you. They respect you. They admire you. When you walk into that same room with nothing but excuses, nobody gives a damn. In fact, they pity you. And pity is the last thing any man should ever want. Being pitied is the mark of someone who has accepted defeat and packaged it as an explanation. I refuse to be that man. I remember one time I had a fight scheduled and everything went wrong leading up to it. Training was messy. I had injuries. I didn't feel prepared. The easy thing to do would have been to pull out, to say I wasn't ready, to stack up excuses so that if I lost, I had a story to fall back on. But I knew deep down that excuses are just pre-built safety nets for failure. They're escape routes for weak men who want to fail without accountability. Ow. So get accountability. I stepped into that fight anyway, because I'd rather lose with no excuses than win by protecting myself with lies. And that mentality carried me everywhere in life. People don't realize how much excuses cost them. They think an excuse protects them, but really, it chains them to mediocrity. Every time you tell yourself you couldn't do something because you were tired, or because you didn't have the resources, or because life was unfair, you're training your brain to accept being average. And once that becomes normal, you're finished. You've built an identity around failure. You become the guy who always has a reason, but never has a result. Nobody respects that guy. The truth is, life is unfair. Some men are born taller, stronger, richer, with better connections. But crying about that reality doesn't change it. The world doesn't sit there and adjust itself to make things fair for you. The world says, play the cards you're dealt and play them well. And here's the thing. Even if your hand is weak, if you play it with enough discipline and aggression, you can still win and still win. I've seen guys with nothing, no money, no background, no support, climb to the top because they refuse to let excuses define them. And I've seen guys who had everything, every opportunity, waste it all because they leaned on excuses like a crutch. When I was broke, I could have said, I can't make it because I don't have capital. But instead, I asked myself, how do I build with nothing? When I lost fights, I could have said, the ref was unfair. The opponent had advantages. Instead, I told myself, you weren't good enough. Fix it. You weren't good enough. Fix it. Every time I was tempted to excuse myself, I replaced it with accountability. That's why I grew. That's why I advanced. That's why I climbed. People want sympathy. They want someone to tell them, it's okay you failed. It wasn't your fault. But that kind of sympathy is poison. It makes you feel better in the short term, but it kills you in the long run. Because the more you hear it's not your fault, the more you start believing you don't control your life. And once you believe that, you're finished. You've surrendered your destiny to circumstances instead of taking command of it. You have to wake up and realize nobody's going to fix your life for you. Nobody's coming to rescue you. If you don't make it happen, it won't happen. The world doesn't care why you didn't succeed. It only remembers whether you did. Stop making excuses. Nobody cares. Pain is the greatest teacher you'll ever have in life, but most men run from it. They think pain is something to be avoided, something to hide from, something that proves life is unfair. But the truth is, pain is not your enemy. Pain is the only thing that has the power to mold you into something stronger than you were before. Every scar you carry, every moment that broke you, every night you spent in silence questioning if you could go on. That's where your strength was born. Oh, pain is the fire that forges warriors, and without it, you'll never become anything worth remembering. When I was younger, I didn't have the luxury of comfort. I've been broke. I've been hungry. I've been in situations where I didn't know how I was going to survive the next month. I've been beaten down in the ring, beaten down by life, beaten down by my own failures. I've lost when I thought I should have won. I've put my entire soul into something only to watch it crumble in front of me. And in those moments, pain was suffocating. It sat heavy in my chest, whispering that maybe I wasn't good enough, that maybe I should give up. But I realized something crucial. Pain wasn't trying to destroy me. It was trying to build me. Most men see pain as a signal to stop. You touch the fire, it burns, and you pull your hand away. That's how average people live their lives, always pulling away from what hurts. But great men, strong men, they learn to walk through the fire. They learn that every burn, every sting, every heartbreak is giving them information. It's teaching them where they are weak, where they need to grow, where they need to harden themselves. Pain is feedback, and feedback is the most valuable tool on the planet. I remember one fight I lost early in my career. I walked into that ring convinced I was going to win, and I got humbled. The pain of that defeat crushed me. I could barely look at myself in the mirror afterward. I wanted to disappear, but instead of running from it, I sat with that pain. I replayed the fight over and over in my mind. I studied my mistakes. I let that humiliation fuel me. And when I came back sharper, faster, smarter. That pain gave me the edge I needed. Without it, I never would have evolved. Life is no different. You lose money, you lose people, you lose opportunities. It hurts, but every single loss is a lesson in disguise. When I was broke, that pain taught me discipline. It taught me hunger. It taught me how to work when I didn't feel like working, how to push when I had nothing left in the tank. When I felt the sting of being ignored, overlooked, dismissed, that pain taught me resilience. It taught me how to build myself so strong that people couldn't ignore me anymore. But when I felt betrayal, when people I trusted turned their backs on me, that pain taught me independence, T vitamins, hooker mo. It taught me how to rely on myself and not expect loyalty from anyone who hadn't proven it. You see, pain has always been my teacher. It never showed up to make me quit. It showed up to make me sharper. And the men who try to live lives without pain, who try to avoid struggle, who seek comfort every day, they end up weak. They end up soft. They end up fragile. Because without pain, there is no growth. Without suffering, there is no strength. Without battles, there are no warriors. You have to rewire your mind to stop fearing pain. When you feel it, recognize it as a sign that you are being tested. And every test is an opportunity to level up. Pain means you're alive. Pain means you're still in the fight. And if you lean into it instead of running from it, pain will give you everything you've ever wanted. I've had days where I thought the pain would break me. Nights where I stared at the ceiling and wondered if it was worth it. But now I realize those exact moments were the ones that shaped me into who I am. Without those battles, without those scars, I would be nothing. Pain was the price I paid for strength. And it's the same price you'll have to pay if you want to be anything more than average. Pain is your greatest teacher. Embrace it. Learn from it and let it turn you into something unstoppable. You cannot sit there drowning in self-pity and take action at the same time. The two cannot exist together. The moment you move, the moment you decide to act, your mind doesn't have the space for weakness. That's why action is the antidote to misery. You can spend hours crying about your situation, telling yourself life is unfair, but the second you get up and start doing the work, your mind begins to shift. The heaviness doesn't feel so heavy anymore because your focus is no longer on your pain, it's on your mission. When I was broke, there were nights where I'd sit in silence staring at the ceiling thinking, how the hell am I going to make it out of this? It would have been so easy to sink into self-pity, to waste those hours feeling sorry for myself, convincing myself I had it harder than anyone else. And believe me, the temptation was always there. But every time that feeling came, I forced myself into action. I'd get up, start making calls, start planning, start pushing in any direction that moved me forward. And within an hour, my mind was different. The problems were still there, but I was attacking them instead of letting them crush me. I learned early that when you feel sorry for yourself, you're standing still. And when you're standing still, life is running laps around you. The bills keep piling up. The competition keeps grinding. The opportunities keep slipping away. Action is the only thing that closes that gap. Action is forward motion. And even if the action is small, even if it feels insignificant, it's still better than sitting there drowning in excuses. I remember training for fights when my body was broken down. I had injuries that made every movement feel like hell. I could have told myself to rest, to stop, to wait until everything felt perfect. But I knew that waiting breeds weakness. So I trained anyway. Maybe I couldn't go as hard. Maybe I couldn't push the same weight. But I showed up. And every day I showed up, the pain had less power over me. Because when you're in motion, when you're taking action, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than whatever is trying to hold you down. Most men don't realize how dangerous inaction is. They think resting, sulking, or overthinking will eventually solve their problems. But sitting there with your head down doesn't make the pain go away. It makes it worse. Your mind starts spiraling. You start magnifying the problem until it feels impossible to overcome. The only thing that breaks that cycle is movement. Lift the weight, make the call, send the email, run the mile, take action, and your brain has no choice but to redirect its energy. When I was hustling for money, I didn't always know what would work. Some ideas failed miserably. Some deals collapsed. But I never sat still. I kept moving. I kept trying. And because I refused to stay in the prison of self-pity, I eventually found the doors that led me out. If I had sat there complaining about how unfair it was, I'd still be broke today. But action kept me alive. Action kept me dangerous. Action gave me options when weakness wanted me trapped. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. You will never feel ready. You will never feel like everything is in place. If you're waiting for the perfect time, you're going to be waiting forever. The men who win are the men who act in spite of doubt, in spite of fear, in spite of pain. They act because they know standing still is death. I've had days where I was exhausted, where every part of me wanted to collapse, where the voice in my head screamed, "You can't keep going." And in those moments, the only thing that saved me was action. I got up. I pushed forward. I took one more step, slow. And that single step always turned into another and another until the momentum carried me out of the darkness. That's the power of action. It creates momentum, and momentum destroys weakness. You can't cry and grind at the same time. You can't feel sorry for yourself while you're building, while you're pushing, while you're conquering. Action leaves no room for excuses. It silences that weak voice in your head and replaces it with discipline, with progress, with strength. That's why the winners of this world are relentless movers. They don't sit. They don't sulk. They don't wait for life to hand them anything. They act and they act again and they act again and they act until the results come. Action kills self-pity. Always. Most men spend their whole lives obsessing over what they don't have. They look at other people's cars, other people's houses, other people's lives, and they drown themselves in jealousy and misery. They sit there counting everything missing from their own existence instead of counting what's already in their hands. And that's why they stay stuck. Misery is fueled by lack, but power is fueled by gratitude. The moment you stop fixating on what's missing and start appreciating what you already have, your entire mindset changes. When I was broke, I could have obsessed over the fact that I didn't have a big house. That I didn't have money stacked up, that I wasn't living the life I wanted yet. I could have sat in self-pity, telling myself the world was unfair because other men had advantages I didn't. But instead, I forced myself to be grateful for what I did have. And my health, I had my brain, I had my time, and I had the ability to fight. And those things, if used correctly, were more valuable than any riches I thought I was missing. Gratitude didn't mean I was satisfied with being broke. No, I hated it. But it meant I wasn't blinded by misery. It meant I could see the tools I already had to build my way out. I remember nights where I had nothing in my fridge but cheap food, scraps really. And instead of sitting there hating my life, I reminded myself there are people out there who don't even have that. I reminded myself I was still alive, I still had two working hands, and I still had a fighting chance. That shift in perspective gave me energy instead of draining me. Because the truth is, when you're grateful for what you have, you're motivated to use it. When you're ungrateful, you paralyze yourself. You spend all your energy crying about what's missing, instead of using what's there. Most people think gratitude makes you soft. They think it means sitting cross-legged on the floor saying, "I'm happy with my little life." That's not what gratitude is. Gratitude is a weapon. It's a way to stay mentally strong. It's looking at what you have, no matter how small, and saying, "Oh, this is enough to start. This is enough to fight with. This is enough to build with." Gratitude stops you from making excuses. Because once you recognize what you already have, you realize the only thing stopping you is your own lack of discipline. I've been in situations where I didn't have money, didn't have luxury, didn't have support. But I had time and I had the ability to work. That was more than enough. I didn't waste energy crying about the million things I didn't have. I doubled down on the few things I did have. And little by little, those things multiplied. Gratitude turns the small into the foundation for the big. I've also seen the opposite. I've seen men with everything. Money, connections, opportunities, and they still walk around miserable. They're ungrateful, so they're weak. They always want more, so they're never satisfied, never disciplined, never willing to fight through difficulty. Gratitude is what separates men who move forward from men who collapse under their own greed and self-pity. Gratitude kept me sharp. When I was fighting, I was grateful for the pain of training because it meant I was alive. It meant I was progressing. When I was broke, I was grateful for my hunger because it gave me drive. When I was alone, I was grateful for solitude because it gave me time to think, time to strategize, time to build. That mindset is why I never stayed down. Every time life stripped something from me, I focused on what was left. And as long as there was something left, I could fight. You can spend your life complaining about what you don't have, but that will never build you. Or you can look at what you do have and ask yourself, how far can I take this? That's how you grow. That's how you grow. That's how you climb. That's how you escape. Stop staring at what's missing. Start using what's already in your hands. Gratitude over misery. Always. A man's mindset is the foundation of his entire existence. If your mind is weak, it doesn't matter how strong your body is, how much money you make, or how many opportunities are thrown at you. You'll always collapse when pressure comes. That's why building the mindset of a warrior is not optional. It's essential. Life is war. Life is war. Every day you wake up, you're either fighting to advance or you're retreating into weakness. And weakness doesn't forgive. Weakness eats men alive. A warrior mindset means you accept reality for what it is. You don't sit around begging for life to be fair. You don't whine when things go wrong. And you don't expect sympathy when you fall. A warrior sees obstacles and immediately asks, how do I conquer this? That's the difference. Weak men waste time feeling sorry for themselves. Strong men adapt and attack. When I was broke, there were countless nights where giving up seemed easy. There were moments I sat in a freezing apartment, no money in my account, and thought, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should stop fighting. Maybe I should stop fighting. But I refused to surrender. I told myself, if I have nothing else, I still have my will. And as long as I have my will, I am dangerous. That's what a warrior mindset is. It's choosing to fight when everything in your life is telling you to quit. I've lost fights in the ring that left me battered and humiliated. Walking out of that cage, knowing I gave everything, and still came up short was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. And in those moments, the easy path was to drown in self-pity, to tell myself it wasn't fair to think about quitting. But instead, I hardened my mind. I told myself, this pain will not define me. This loss will not break me. And the very next day, I was back in the gym, training, bleeding, sweating, rebuilding myself stronger. That's what a warrior does. He doesn't whine, he doesn't fold, he learns, he adapts, and he comes back sharper. The reason most men never succeed is because they don't have the mental armor to withstand the blows life throws at them. They want comfort, they want sympathy, they want people to feel sorry for them. But comfort breeds weakness. Sympathy destroys ambition. Pity kills drive. You cannot conquer anything if your first instinct when life gets hard is to cry about it. A warrior mindset doesn't allow room for that. A warrior knows that pain, failure, betrayal, loss, these are part of the battle. And instead of seeing them as curses, he sees them as weapons to sharpen himself with. When I had nothing, I was forced to build myself from scratch. And the only thing that carried me through was the mindset that I was not allowed to quit. Even when I was broke, even when doors slammed in my face, even when people doubted me, I reminded myself, warriors don't beg, warriors don't complain, warriors don't quit. They fight until the battle is won. And that mentality is why I survived. Every man watching this has two choices. You can live like the average man, crying, complaining, explaining why you couldn't make it. Or you can build the mind of a warrior and refuse to accept weakness in any form. The warrior mindset is ruthless. It doesn't care about feelings. It doesn't care about fairness. It only cares about victory. Asking for shit. And once you develop it, nobody can stop you, because even if you fall, you'll rise again, harder, stronger, more relentless than before. I've been at the bottom. I felt pain most people wouldn't survive. But because I chose the mind of a warrior, I never stayed down. Build the mindset of a warrior, because self-pity is the enemy, and discipline is the weapon that makes you unstoppable. Stop crying, stop waiting, stop making excuses. Stand up, fight, and take what's yours, because nobody's coming to save you.